public in a documented historical way, and not just privately with individual council members on the dais. So or looking up information that the rest of us don't have access to kind of can be very distracting, and it's not fair to the public or the other council members. So I would agree with that. I would just agree with it for different reasons than what you've stated. I think it's a transparency issue and a requirement for the open meetings as well.
Councilmember Cuesta.
Oh, sorry.
Just on this point, it went from no emailing or texting to no using the internet, and I think that that is a leap that I wouldn't necessarily follow. There's times that I look something up, and the internet is handy. I'd like to have it here and there as a reference point. Agreed on emailing and texting, no. Thank you.
I agree. Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem.
In the public hearing piece of it, though, we probably shouldn't be looking things up on the internet because it's limited only to that. So it does need to stay there. Thank you.
Councilmember Cuesta, does that make sense to you? Okay, great. I don't see any other objections, so we make that tweak. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. Continue, Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, then on page 20, under F, computer supplies and technology, it talks about discretionary funds being able to be used for all different things. And it says other technology expenses, including cellular telephone reimbursement, are permitted. And I don't have an issue with that. I'm just wondering if the public is paying for our whatever, cellular telephone bills or whatever. I think it's only fair that we would make known to the public what the telephone number is published on the website. Or is that not necessary?
I would assume that's what someone is doing, but is that the case for anybody here? Yeah. Oh, do we need maybe put that in to say that it has to be a published? Yeah, I don't have any trouble with that. I don't know why they would get one and not do that, but you're right.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Anybody else have an objection to that? All right. Member Cuesta, your light is still on. I just want to make sure you're not.
I think most of this I have earmarked. The next one that I have is, I just put, let's see, page 25 under vacancy created by the mayor. And there's a sentence, it's the second to the last sentence. If it so wishes, the council may wait until the new council member is installed before electing a new mayor. I just would like that striked. I mean, one way or the other, it doesn't matter. We did it anyway, so I don't think it needs to be in there.
If it's not in there, will there be confusion? I think this document needs to make sure that there's no confusion. So redundancy is not a problem for me on this one.
Right. This is not one I feel that I want to die on necessarily, but just.
Do others want to see it changed to take it out? Councilmember Martinez.
Which page of the policy draft are you on?
Page 25.
25.
And it's under 9C, vacancy created by the mayor.
You're on the draft, not the one that's already been marked up. Is that right? Yeah. When you give your numbers, you're talking about this
Yes, because there is no new document yet, is there?
No, but there is one that has some changes in it already. I want to make sure it didn't have some changes in,
Oh,
in
okay.
that realm.
No,
So-
this is the draft. This is the draft one.
Could you give the like paragraph or heading so that I could find it in this? 'Cause
It is 9 council vacancies, C, under vacancy created by the mayor, and it's the second to the last sentence.
It's page 25 of 29 of the document, but then page 32 of 173 of the entire hard copy you might have.
Mayor,
Yeah, Councilmember Wink.
thank you. So we are deciding whether or not to remove that sentence? I think it's okay to leave it. I think the redundance is just reiteration. Here, I think making it doubly clear is probably more helpful than not. Yeah.
It's
Okay.
9C.
No, I understand that piece. I haven't found it. If she could just repeat the sentence again, I would
If,
appreciate it.
if it so wishes, the council may wait until the new council member is installed before electing a new mayor.
Yeah, it's the second to last statement in that paragraph. It looks like this. It's really quite towards the end, it's like 4 pages toward the end, Councilmember Valentine.
That's what I was given on this.
We're working on the policy, not the handbook right now.
We didn't get one in the packet this week, in the paper packet, February 25th, there were no changes, and it wasn't printed out, so there was a note.
Do you want to keep going, Mayor Pro Tem, or do you want to,
Unless somebody else.
I do.
Councilmember Valentine does?
Do you believe that would, or anybody, believe that might create a delay in putting a mayor in until somebody else is put in? I don't want to create a situation where we don't have the position filled. So is that part of your concern, or?
Well, may I respond, Mayor?
Please do.
Thank you. It's possible that it could. I mean, I believe that some of these rules we wrote by circumstances that happens, and I understand that's how you write rules when things happen, but there are unintended consequences of some things. That's why if we left it out, we did what we needed to do anyway. And it's very possible that we couldn't have appointed a mayor until the 7th council member came on, because it's possible we would be evenly split. So that's all that I'm suggesting.
Councilmember Martinez?
Thank you. The sentence after that one says, if that should occur, then the mayor pro tem would fulfill the functions of the mayor until the new mayor is elected. I would prefer to leave those 2 sentences in, only because it is very clear then, if we wait, then this happens. So it's just really clear.
Councilmember Cuesta?
Thank you. And I think it is pretty well stated there what would occur if council wishes to not install the new mayor. I guess it's assumed then that a majority have to make that decision in that language. That's the only thing I could see being contentious, if people really want to split hairs. And that could be a touchy issue too. What if it was split? What if it was a 3-3? Which I
Then
mean,
they
we
could
encountered
decide-
not that long ago.
Then they could decide to do it, they could appoint one right away.
Sure.
This allows for them to feel free to do it the way we did it. I think it's helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Why go through it if you do? Yeah. All right. Are we okay with it leaving there? All right. Mayor Pro Tem, continue. I think you're the
Okay.
only one. I have one after you're done.
All right, I am on page 26 now under telephonic participation. I'm just going to read what I have underlined tonight. It is like the second sentence. With advancements in communication equipment, telephonic meeting participation has become more popular with many local governments. However, telephonic participation has inherent limitations. I don't even remember what I was thinking at that point in time. I don't know that it's necessary. I think with the Skype interview that we had, we see the limitations of that again. Then down a little bit farther, it says, in addition, telephonic participation during executive sessions prevents the city from ensuring compliance with state law. So I don't remember why I underline those.
This section is about the council's participation via that mode, not the interviewees that we had with the EAF. So-
Right, right. And I understand that. I was just using that as an example of the problems that can occur. So, and I really felt like council came to a conclusion on this, not to use telephonic participation, quite a while ago when we went over this.
So I'll weigh in a bit. we're a different council, for one, and so we get to decide. Secondly, before, I think 2.5 years ago, there were a couple of council members, and even before my time, that had traveling jobs, and they called in on a study session, and they participated just like anybody else, and it was absolutely fine, and it worked fine. So I would think that would be more where I'd be more lenient, like one time a year or a couple times a year for that. Just seems like there are some people, I can think of a number on our council right now, where that might work sometimes, and we'd have their participation if they're in a hotel somewhere. So I certainly wouldn't want to lead a meeting from there. I wouldn't do it, but
Can I respond to that?
yeah, go ahead.
I don't have an issue with them participating in a study session as many times as they need to.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So, Councilmember Sierra?
Well, yeah, I was going to click the light. So obviously this hasn't happened yet, but I could see myself being in this situation where I do have to use a telephone at certain points over the course of the year. I guess my question would be, just because I don't recall the wording on this, what about voting if it was part of a city council meeting? Would I be able to vote over the phone if I...
So that's where this came in before. There wasn't anything before, and then we put it in here as to, it was a no for the voting in there, except on very special circumstances that we might choose to do that, but study session got limited as well in the way this got written. So I'm a little more, I'm a lot like Mayor Pro Tem. I would think study session could happen for people with jobs that travel a lot, but that probably in the regular meeting, it might not be the best practice. At least at this point, we can always revisit it. Does that make sense for people?
I'm okay with that. I just wanted clarification to know what to expect if it did happen.
Yeah. Okay.
May I clarify?
Sure.
So this policy, it's come up so often. I like the idea of leaving it in there so it's clear to future councils. It has been discussed, and the issues associated with it are acknowledged, but it is totally your call. As I'm understanding it right now, the consensus of the council is to leave the telephonic participation policy in, but to make sure it's very clear that there's no voting on matters before the council via electronic means. If you're not in the room, you cannot vote. Is that what I'm understanding by consensus?
I think that is what folks are thinking about. I see a lot of head nodding. Councilmember Barentine.
Similar to when you're going to abstain from a vote. If you're going to abstain from a vote, you are required to not participate. You can't comment. You can't give your opinion. If you're going to abstain for a vote because you have some kind of conflict of interest, you can't influence the vote either and then be abstaining from it. And I think that's similar here, is that I would not want telephonic participation or any other kind of participation from somebody not present in the room. Even if they're not going to vote, they would be influencing, giving an opinion, participating, and just because they're not voting, and I think that's inappropriate. So at least for the council meetings, I think that would be inappropriate. For the study sessions, I think it would be, it's doable, and we've done it before. I don't have a problem for that, but in there, I think we ought to keep that consistency in there for the council room. So if I'm kind of hearing it go to a direction that somebody could participate via phone and then just be barred from voting, and I think that creates a problem because they're influencing the vote. They're actually participating in a way that the public can't see them or what's influencing them, and they're influencing people. And so I'd like to keep it out of the council meeting altogether.
I didn't hear that, but good that you brought that up, because if that's what people thought, it wasn't what.
And I guess I
Costa.
was seeking the clarification as well. Is this telephonic participation in study session, council, or both that we're discussing?
Study session. I
was under the impression it was study session and not including council.
I was too.
Because I would
think
agree
that's
that
what all of
I
us were
think
saying.
council, it could just get choppy,
Yes.
and there's a lot of things that could go wrong. But
That's what I
would
thought all of
support
us
study
were
session.
shaking our heads to. Study session only, not in regular. If we were to change that, we'd have to change this in the future.
And I'm only
All right.
asking that we clarify that because it was kind of confusing, I think, from what got stated. Thank you.
Yeah, great. Another one, Mayor Pro Tem.
The next one is on page 28, and the annual evaluation of city officers, the city manager and the city attorney, annual reviews. I guess I have a question about the annual wage adjustment. And in my margin, I have merit raises or comparable to other municipalities. I actually would like us to discuss that one.
Do you want to kick us off with what you think?
It seems, I don't see this now. Did we have in here, and I don't know where I read this, that about raises would be the same as other city employees? Where did I don't see it here.
It's in the annual wage adjustment.
Okay. Oh, yeah, all right. City manager and city attorney shall receive the same general percentage increase in wages as applied to all of their administrative staff. I don't agree with that because they are on a different level than, I do agree that we do need to have annual evaluations, and I think that we've failed on doing that for quite a while, not just with the city attorney, but also with the city manager. And so I think that that needs to be set in stone that we do that. But I think they are different type of employees than the rest of the city staff.
All right, Councilmember Barentine.
I don't think it's appropriate to put an automatic clause in there that they get an evaluation, and if they don't get an evaluation, they get an automatic raise. I think that's not an appropriate way for this council to handle their two direct report employees. It's just not appropriate. And I'm very concerned about having it be in a policy like that.
Anyone else? Councilmember Wink.
Thanks, Mayor. I do want us to state it succinctly within the policy manual that council will conduct performance reviews annually for the city manager and city attorney, 1. 2, I agree with Mayor Pro Tem that those two positions and individuals perform at a level that's different, separate of the balance of the administrative staff. And so I would love to research what municipalities in the area around the country, varying sizes, use as their policies for the rate of increase. In my career so far, professional career, I mean, I think it's standard. So I think we should state it. We should set that percentage, and we should move forward and ensure that we always perform that and always allow those two individuals to get their pay increase. It's standard operation to me.
Councilmember Martinez.
I was going to say something similar. I like that it's in here, so it does remind us to do it every year because we've been not doing that every year, and we need to. But right after that, it says, unless otherwise set by formal action of the city council. So do we want to adjust that language so to set a formal action or what? I don't know. But I like that it's in here. We can change the language, but I like to keep it in here that some kind of annual wage adjustment takes place.
Great. I would agree with that. I think this is written in such a way so that if we didn't do a review, they would at least get something. But I would prefer to say we're held to be accountable to give them feedback, help them be successful, and do a review like any other big professional would. These are highly professional jobs that deserve that kind of attention from us. And I tell you, out of the 12 years I've been on council, 10, yeah. Oh. I could be done in the fall. We have been lousy at this, so I would love to see this very clear here that we're doing reviews every year, because reviews are not just, they're about helping people do their job well, and to me they should go really well, and they should be often, and feedback should be helpful, and so I would agree. Councilmember Sierra.
So I know that we stated, and can you hear me okay on this, or
It's just speak
A little closer.
really into it.
closer?
There you go.
I guess so this year we're not doing one for the interim city manager. So I know that we're going through the process of identifying a new city manager. But worst case scenario, what if we don't have a city manager this time next year? So I think that there should be some wording in here that we should be providing a performance evaluation. And sorry to dampen your mood there, Interim City Manager.
She shuddered.
But the point is, maybe we should make an or state that, you know, the interim city manager should also be evaluated. I know we didn't do it this past year, but that's my only comment regarding that aspect.
So one thing we could do is, I mean, it would be unfortunate, and we know you would do a great job if you were here to the end of another year. But let's hold ourselves to, if that did happen, that we'd do a performance review so that there was some kind of raise in it. Yeah, I think my concern is that we're not giving raises or giving more than that. It's feedback. It's a performance review feedback. Whether there's money for raises or not is really secondary. Mayor Pro Tem?
I think perhaps we should put in the policy manual that the annual performance review would be done on their anniversary month. I'm not sure.
That's how it was done before, and I think that's why we missed it, because they were staggered all over the place. So it seems to me like to do it in the budget year, and you're going to be caught up then. You have maybe someone's here a half a year, and we do it at a half year mark because that's the budget cycle, and then we get into a 1 year. I think that's why it didn't get done. Plus, we went through wage freezes during a number of years, so nobody was talking about that. But we still didn't do a performance review, which is still not helpful.
Right. I think we do need to do performance reviews regardless of whether money's tight or whatever.
Right. Member Wink?
Thank you. So to get back to editing the document, in light of what was just said by all of us, I believe, by all of us, under section 11A1, then should we then remove, unless otherwise set by formal action of the city council, remove that phrase, understanding that we will commit to performing or conducting these performance evaluations. Just remove it. This is how we perform. This is how we function here.
So rewrite it to be that
to not leave that doubt and that opportunity in case we miss the evaluation. I mean, in my career, it just never gets missed. Right.
It really should be an HR function that reminds us to do this too.
Correct. And also, I think the date when they occur is an HR function. I mean, that's something that's decided by HR, not by us.
Does this
Am
make
I not
sense,
correct?
what we're saying so far? Do you want to repeat back to us what you think you're hearing? And we'll see if we all agree with it.
What I've heard at this point is there is some concern about the phrase shall receive the same general percentage increase in wages as applied to all other administrative staff. And then others have said, yes, but it also continues that unless otherwise set by formal action of the city council, which allows the city council the flexibility to make the appropriate decision based on whatever factors are happening in that year. So I'm not sure if there should be a change to that phrase or there should not be. I'm kind of looking for a consensus.
Okay. So Mayor Pro Tem was the one who kicked off. Why don't you give us the language
Actually,
you'd like?
I would suggest that perhaps we remove number 1 altogether. And if we want to put something about wage adjustments, we should tie it to the performance review. Because I don't want the same general percentage increase as, I mean, it may happen that that's what the council would decide for our employee, but we may decide higher than that also, or we may decide that, we need to freeze wages for whatever reason. I mean, I hope that doesn't happen, but I can tell you when my husband worked at the post office, we went 10 years without a raise, period.
Council Member Wink?
So I don't agree with removing that section. If a freeze does occur, it's across the board, and so I don't think we need to adjust for such an event here in this specific instant. I think leave the section in for the city manager and city attorney, and then just maybe modify this to not state that it's the same as with other administrative staff.
That'll be determined by the review. Okay. Councilmember Berentine.
So we're not suggesting that this council turn that function over to HR then? That's okay.
No.
Because we can't acquiesce our duty, and nor do I think an employee should be handed that is inappropriate. I think any kind of automatic increase is inappropriate. It has to be a discussion from the body of this council to have their input for the 2 direct reports that they have, and we need to take that seriously and do it once a year. When I was on council before, we never missed one. It was January. The judge, the city attorney, and city manager all came at the same time. So I don't know how all of that got changed. Maybe HR should at least remind us. But maybe those employees took it upon themselves to make sure that happened too. I don't know. I know the last city manager made it very clear that he didn't want he waited. He said he didn't want one, and when he wanted one, then he made it very clear that he wanted to meet with us. So I disagree with that being the onus of the employee as well. I think that puts a burden on them, and it should be something that's more regular so that you have that feedback. As far as our interim, she's got here, and so with all the kind of turmoil, sometimes it does get off a little schedule because she just took the position a few months ago. So we're trying to make sure that we keep everything on track. But I would agree that I think that whole thing could probably be taken out. They are not employees. We do not handle our directors that way. I don't want anything that's on some kind of automatic, or that if it gets missed, it just goes to what the employees are getting. I think that's just really inappropriate. So probably would be better off if it was just taken out of there and we just put it in there that we will ensure that we have an annual review on their anniversary date or whatever this council thinks in August before we do the budget, whatever this council thinks would be appropriate, but that it's annual for the people that report to us.
Okay, what I would like to suggest is we ask the attorney to write something that would suggest, I don't think we should take annual wage adjustment out either. And I certainly, as people are watching tonight who are looking at coming here for a job, I would want them to know this is important, and that we are going to take it seriously with a review, and that the primary focus of this is that there will be an annual review by council for both of these positions, and that that annual wage adjustment will be determined based on that review.
So what I've got now is the modification that was suggested by Mayor Pro Tem. The city manager and city attorney shall receive a wage increase as set by formal action of the city council. That way it's a decision of the city council.
Because you've already said the annual evaluation, the sentence above.
Yeah.
Okay. I think that's fine. I think that, and the only statement I was making about HR was that if we are going to go with the hire date, then someone needs to remind us when that is, and I don't think it's up to the 2 employees to have to figure it out every time, although that's why women often don't make as much as men, is because they don't ask. But I think it would be a good thing for us to have it on their teaser calendar to remind us, okay, June you need to do this so that it's built into the budget, and therefore it's done. And I really welcome that as a administrative task only, not a review task.
To clarify, I used the language, I was asked to find some language because you are getting ready to hire a city manager.
I think hold it a little closer.
You are getting ready to hire a city manager, and these are questions that are going to be asked, and we need to have an answer. So I did look for language from other cities, and this language is very close to Lakewood. And I pulled a couple sentences, clarifying sentences from a couple other surrounding entities to create this. The only change that I made was the May 1st date, and that's because the HR department has established April 15th as the deadline for all performance reviews for all employees. And just to keep everybody on the same cycle, I think that it would be appropriate. The other thing is, for example, my anniversary date is April 1st. which ties in wonderfully with the city has everyone reviewed by April 15th. So if you want to back that date back to April 15th to keep it on target with the rest of HR, I can put that modification in as well. If that's not something that you want, I can leave that out.
Makes sense to me. We make it uniform all the way across the board. Anybody have any objections to that? Let's do it the same with everybody. All right. Did you have one more?
I have one more, and that is the judge's salary review. And the way this is written, I had put out here not transparent, and he's elected. And actually, he submitted to us something that I thought was very good.
Yes, and it's in your packet. I'm going to go down to the language that he submitted. And again, I was using language from other cities, and we are the only city in Colorado that has an elected judge. So it does make this city different from other cities. But the language that he included, this is such a long
I know,
document at this point.
Does
after
anybody have a
over
handle on
year.
what the number of the page is?
Yeah, I'm at the end and I don't see it.
Okay, it's on page 7 of 173, I believe.
Is that the beginning? 7 of 173?
He submitted the information, and I think it didn't get picked up. I think it was in the last packet, but didn't get picked up in this. But he submitted some wonderful languages, you're right. Just a moment, I bet I can pull that out of my email.
We could
Point
hold
of
that.
information.
Yes, go
Did I
ahead.
hear reference page 7 of 173? Mine's going to 148 is where mine tops. Well, no, excuse me. I'm just saying my page count limits at 148.
On
That's
your
my last page.
electronic, but
Yes.
the actual on the hard copy, it's 173. So she's probably looking at another, yeah. Are there any other ones while she's looking? Mayor Percham covered the one I was thinking of, but then I had a second one that I forgot about, and that is, I think we've talked about this, but we didn't talk too much at length about whether or not we want people during the scheduled and unscheduled comments only portion to not have to give their address specifically, to say that they either live in a district or live in the city or not in the city. I would say that if for public hearings, however, I think it's pretty common practice that everybody reads into their address because they're weighing in, because you have to be sworn in. But for the regular comments and the unscheduled, scheduled, it seems to me like we have, I know there are people that don't want to come anymore. They're really nervous about saying anything and being that there's retaliation. So, Councilmember Cuesta.
I do support people just being able to use district, cross streets. I don't personally glean anything greater if I get their specific address in most cases. There's some example. We had the Airbnb that was kind of troublesome. That gives me some frame of reference. But just people speaking to a general topic, I don't think it increases my understanding any better if I have their specific address. Thank you.
Councilmember Martinez.
I would concur as well. I don't think it's important or good, actually, to share your address when you come up. So I'm fine with either saying I'm a resident of Englewood or I'm not a resident of Englewood, or your district if they know that, or cross streets, any of them. But we don't need the address for sure.
Okay. Councilmember Sierra.
I agree. I don't think that the address is necessary.
Okay. Councilmember Barentine.
I would agree there's people that have a huge concern, both for a lot of reasons, and giving their address when they're going up there. So I would appreciate that they just, like Councilmember Cuesta said, just give their district or cross street or whatever they're comfortable with. I would like to know whether they're a resident or not, and I would have to agree with you on a public hearing. There is a little bit different requirement there. So aside from that, though, the regular, I think nobody wants to have the kind of retribution that's been going on either from the city or anybody else.
Yep.
So.
Councilmember Wink.
Just to add a bit more detail to what Member Martinez said, suggested, perhaps when it's not a public hearing, and in addition to naming a district, if there's a resident, maybe encourage the speakers to just share an affiliation with the city of Englewood if they're external. It's always helpful to provide some context. I own a hairdressing salon in District 3, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
Just some detail
We'll write something.
beyond even resident, non-resident.
Okay, great. I'm concerned about the time. We still have to do the finance report for March and a quick update on the city manager. So I wonder if the judge one, do you want to resend it out to us so everybody sees it again?
I've already resent it out to everybody by email, and it will take 30 seconds to read.
Okay.
The presiding municipal judge of the city of Englewood is an elected official, and as such, the presiding judge is not given a performance evaluation by the city council, but rather should serve as a reminder that budgetary matters for the court are reviewed annually by the city council. The presiding judge, in coordination with the city manager and the human resources department, shall conduct an annual salary survey of similar highest ranking judges of courts of comparable operations located within the Denver metropolitan area. The presiding judge shall provide the list of comparables to the city manager and human resources director for completion of the survey. The city council shall annually determine the appropriate compensation for the presiding judge by resolution after consideration of the annual survey, but prior to the end of the calendar year. The presiding judge shall be invited to participate in any such discussions which shall take place in open session.
Councilmember Quest?
It's another matter, pardon me.
Okay. Do you want to have a minute to look at this another time and then bring it back? Otherwise, I think this might be the only thing that's still outstanding. Councilmember Barentine.
I would like to ask if we could ask the judge if it would be something you could put in there that it's not only the judge that could come and present, but we've had Tamara Wolf come and present that information before, so whether he can designate somebody instead of it just specifically listing him for updates on the court, or have some process so that if we have any questions, we can ask questions on any information that's given to us, so that there's a timely process. So maybe we could put something back to him to get some clarification.
I would want the judge to be the one who brings it before us if we're going to vote on a change in salary. But if we get updates a little bit more regularly, I think either one is great. That's fine with me. And I think that's really going to be welcome to get a little bit more. Councilmember Barentine?
And I just want to clarify, because when I was on council before, we did not do it legally, and we did it in executive session. And so there was some privacy given even to the judge. But knowing now that it has to be done in open meeting, I think that because he's an elected official, and we didn't do that way before. They just all three came and we did it in an executive session. And I think that puts the judge in an awkward position as an elected official to come and answer questions publicly from another elected body that way. So I'd like to see a little bit more of a process, or like what the mayor said, a little bit more of an update process, and then maybe questions to that. But this last time was somewhat awkward for an elected body to be reviewing an elected official the way that we did. I'd like to see that process change. I just would like to get a little bit more feedback from the judge, and I think it would be wholly appropriate for him to send anybody to answer questions if we're doing that, but I don't know that that would be something he would even like, so I'd like to hear that first.
Anybody else want to weigh in? Okay, we're going to table this part of it for now. I think everything else can be changed, and I don't know if we can put it on to pass that night and have it added, or what?
I can make all of these changes and send a draft out to everybody. Honestly, I can do it tomorrow and send a draft out to everybody, and then the mayor and mayor pro tem can decide if they're ready to put this on the agenda, or if there's something specific they want to discuss before they do that. But the next version you see will be the one that includes all of the requested changes from the last 3 meetings.
Right, thank you. All right, we'll go with the financial report for March, and city manager interview update if we have to. We save that till in the regular meeting. Okay, great. We want to give you the time needed. Thank you, Director Maria Sobota, here to give us the financial outlook.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So tonight, I have provided you with the March 2019 financial report. It was included in your package. This is a new format, so I'm interested in getting your feedback. I was hoping to have a little bit more time.
You
So
get the whole 15 minutes. Well, we need to get in there, but
I don't know if I can. I don't necessarily think I can get through it in 15 minutes, but I will definitely ask for your feedback. But I'll also point out a few things that I want to bring to your attention.
one thing you can be sure that we've read it all. So I'm just assuming we've read it all. So act as if we've read it all and you're just reviewing it with us, because if we haven't, we didn't do our job.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right. So slide 1, general fund revenues. I think the main takeaway, this is exactly how it was formatted in the previous packages that we've provided to you. However, we've highlighted the areas to make it a little bit more readable. And what I will do is highlight significant areas that perhaps we should be concerned about. That's really what the purpose of the financial package truly is. I don't feel that we have any concerns as far as revenues to this point. If you see variances here, it's primarily due to timing of receipts. The one area that I'll talk about a little bit later is within our vehicle and building use taxes, and I brought that to your attention within the memo too. So I'll also not only bring information to you like this, but if I see something that looks a little unusual through an analysis, I will point it out in the memo so that you have an opportunity to go directly to that and look to it. So with 25% of the fiscal year complete, we've collected approximately $12.6 million in revenue, which is 25.5% of budgeted revenue. So obviously we're slightly ahead, which is something that I had reported to you before, that we feel that at this point, because we are collecting more sales and use tax primarily, we expect that our revenues for the fiscal year will be higher than we originally budgeted. This is something that was also shared in previous packets. It's a cumulative change in sales and use tax collected. This slide replaced one that we had previously included, some monthly variances that we felt probably didn't give us the best information. And I think the key takeaway here, we have seen on a cumulative change basis in sales and use tax collections about a $5 million increase. We would use this slide to basically come back and say things are starting to level off, maybe reach a decision point. You know, if we see several months of it leveling off and not seeing a cumulative change, that we might talk about the expense budget, you know, at that point. This is actually a new slide. I'm going to have for the next review also a slide that looks like this for expenses. I think it's important to call out areas that are either above some percentage of the budget or lower than. In this case, this just shows revenues. So for those items where we've collected more or less than 10% of where we think we should be, or the budgeted revenue for the fiscal year, we're going to point that out and explain it. So Parks and Recs is the only one that is greater than 10% lower, and that is expected because most of their revenue is collected in the summer months. So I would come forth and typically tell you if something was off that didn't quite make sense. Like in the summer months, if Parks and Rec continues to be below where we expect them to be, that might be a concern, and we might try to forecast that out and, if necessary, adjust expenses accordingly so that we could come in on budget. In the other areas, so I'll highlight that in red. As you can see, it's kind of shadowed in red. And in the other areas, interest and miscellaneous and hotel and motel tax, those are actually 10% higher than the budgeted revenue. So there's relatively small numbers, though, to be perfectly honest, in terms of the general budget. So the general fund expenditures at 25% of the month complete, they are actually well below the budget, 20.2% of expenditure budget. So no concerns there. You might have noticed that the city manager's budget, including the fire contract, is 29.9%, which is higher than the 25% complete. But we do actually pay the fire contract a month in advance. So
I think these are good reports for us as the finance staff to review, and if we see something out of whack, we would definitely talk with the department director and make sure that we bring forth anything that we should certainly be concerned about. But I don't see anything in the expense area that we necessarily need to address at this point. This I'm going to actually retitle because it'll be 2018 and 2019 monthly general fund revenue and expenditures. The way that I use this report is to make sure that the trends by the month are similar to what we experienced in the previous year. If I would see any revenue or expenditures that perhaps didn't follow a trend, might be an area that we'd want to look into. So I might suggest if you look at this, if you have questions for me in particular, that's how you would use this report. You've definitely seen this report before. It's the general fund fund balance composition, and we certainly will be talking about the reserves above policy relative to our capital discussion later this week during the workshop. You can see that our reserves available above policy at this time are $7.3 million, and of course that includes the LTAR, which is the second line in the numerical section of the chart, with a year-end estimate balance of approximately $5 million. This is a bit of a change. We've shown the year-to-date sales and use collections by area before, so the graphical piece of this, so you can see, or I should say the graphic piece of this, so you can see for each area how they have trended as far as sales and use tax collections over the past several years. What we extracted, there were a lot of numbers on pages before, and so I tried to extract important numbers that I was asked when I was sitting in this chair before, specifically related to, of course, we want to know our total sales and use tax collected, but also our refunds that we've given back this year versus last year, unearned sales tax that has come up, and the vehicle use and building use. This is the report that I really started to focus on this month because obviously you can see that our vehicle use and building use tax receipts are lower than last year. This will come into play because these numbers are part of that $4 million annual revenue collection number that I spoke about when I did the budget kickoff that we use for capital. So we do need to continue to monitor this because it's possible that we could have $1 million less to spend in capital than we had originally expected. The reason that this occurs is because people do not buy cars every year, quite frankly. So we can see these types of fluctuations, and it's important that we keep our eye on that and make sure that any decisions that we're making, we're making it, mindfully, and we're thinking about the things that maybe aren't achieving the levels that we had expected when we put the budgets together. This is also a new chart. This is a 3-year average of year-to-date sales tax collected by area. I thought this was an interesting way to display it because it shows the relative size of our sales tax collection areas. I want to point out Area 7. So this is a 3-year average year-to-date. So it's March year-to-date over the past 3 years. This is actually businesses, this is actually sales tax collected by businesses that are not in Englewood, that actually come into Englewood, such as a plumber, and maybe uses a part and collects sales tax. That's actually the remittances we receive for businesses outside of Englewood. There is a little bit of online in there, and I mentioned that we're going to have to be moving that over to Area 14. So by next month, that'll be adjusted. We're doing some reclassifications, but it won't be very significant. This was also included in the previous package. I've just made it a little bit larger, so I know I could read it. I think this is still important information because it gives you an idea of within each area what businesses have left and what businesses have entered the Englewood area. So I'll continue to show that.
Dr. Sobota, could I ask if we could ask any questions now for what you just presented and then do the appendix on Saturday?
We probably don't even need to do the appendix, quite frankly. That was for your use so that you can see by area. That information was also provided in previous packages. I've just split it out by area so it was more easily, you could read it more easily. So yes, I'll stop now.
Okay.
I'll take any questions.
Mayor Pro Tem.
Can we go back one slide? I believe it is 2 slides. Next one. That one. What is the regular use? Is that use tax compared to sales tax?
It is use tax, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sierra.
So, regarding the Supreme Court decision with Wayfair, aren't online sales supposed to be collected now in 2019, or is it now? Was the decision actually that businesses don't have to comply with online sales tax to local municipalities until 2020, 2021? Because I'm kind of interested in the fact that there's actually less sales tax collected year to date than last year.
So I think that might be an issue with Area 7 actually having some of those dollars included in that figure. And I need to move it to Area 14, which we will do by next month. So we've got it, it's in the system, it's being reported incorrectly right now, so we need to transfer it. But they are self-reporting right now, the online businesses.
Thank you.
Councilmember Barentine.
I think this is probably more for Saturday, but I would like to get kind of to the culture of the sales and use tax and some comments that got made over the last couple months and some issues that got brought to me from people who had audits, that the culture of this, the belief of this, isn't that it just affects businesses, it affects everybody. There was a comment that was made that everybody owes use tax. So if I buy a ream of paper in Littleton and the sales tax is higher here, then actually I am personally responsible as well to make sure that I remit that. I would like to make sure that we make a very clear statement of the culture and where we're going with this, because we have people that are concerned about home offices, people that work part-time at home, whether their company bought their computer, or how intrusive this might end up getting, or how obligated people are as individuals for what they're doing. If I go to Murdoch's and buy food for my dog at one place, and then and the answer back to that question was yes, you would owe that money. So I want to know where we're kind of drawing the lines and make sure that we have an understanding of what the culture of this is.
Is specific to use tax.
Yes, and we could do that on Saturday because we're late on time, but I would appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I like some of these. That one with the up and down with the bar graphs, and then that's really interesting. I've never seen anything quite like it, but it does show you some oddities. Mayor Pro Tem.
I agree. Well, I do like it. I have one question that you said something about if we're not bringing in, if our money falls short, goes down to $1 million. I think that in capital projects. So is the money that we approved for 2019 capital projects, or will it be the money for 2020?
It's the money going forward in 2020.
Okay, thank you.
Not to worry yet.
And I will be very specific during the workshop and show you where that would fall.
Great. We look forward to that. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We look forward to a fun Saturday together. All right, folks, we have a few minutes to go. Take any little break and get next door.